Subscribe to Simply Bitcoin.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome in. You made it to another episode of the Meme Factory Stream Test. This is Stream Test number 134. And this evening we are joined by David Bennett. David, who runs one of my favorite Bitcoin podcasts, Bitcoin and, doesn't need to really introduce himself. So, David, you just say hi, and then we'll move on
Hi.
to we'll move on to getting paid for having you here in the first place. Oh, so David, thank you for giving us your time today.
Thanks for inviting me. Have really missed you guys, honestly.
Well,
We missed you too, man.
you keep
Missed you
interrupting me
too.
like that, you won't be on again,
Sorry, man.
Erect.
though. All right, so David, if you if you check out your Twitter DMs, I've sent you the ad copy from Suscorp today. If you could rip through that, and we can get on with the rest of the show here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Where is my? Well, it's here somewhere. Hold up. Let's see. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is David Bennett, and this is episode of the Meme Factory Stream Test is brought to you by our old friends at Suscorp and their new product, the Pesticide. Suscorp's formerly disgraced commercial playground equipment division has teamed up with the most affordable minds in playground technology. We're proud to finally give back to America's farming families. After all, if not for them, where else could a company dump acres of expired pig fetuses? Through the ingenious marriage of the slide concept that we all love and an expired Reich patent for Zyklon C Suscorp has birthed a viable, healthy pig fetus of an idea. The pesticide. The pesticide gives farm children a place to play and be kids, while also coating their fragile young bodies in a super effective pesticide. By simply frolicking through your crops, the children will coat those plants and keep pests away. In essence, pesticide kills two birds with one stone, combining healthy child labor practices and fun. More than two dead birds may be a cause for concern. Concern for the birds, that is. Get your pesticide today or visit the Kathy Woods Orphanage for Undesirable Children and test one out yourself.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Oh, there's too much in the news today, man.
I can't keep up.
There's too much. Although you did, you tickled my fancy with something you brought up recently. What the hell are nut zaps?
Pablo F7Z doesn't sleep.
No, he doesn't.
Dude's like a machine.
I've been trying to get him on. He's too busy.
I know it's impossible, but essentially he dropped version 0.1 today as a functional website that you can go to and have fun on. It's hold on. Is it nutme? Nutzap.me, I think. Let me
Becca's favorite website.
Was your
It's
first guess nut me?
Yes.
nutsack nutsack.me nutsack.me. And yeah, so well, here's the thing, because it ends up, I mean, the weaponized autism here is extreme. I don't know if modern society is going to survive Bitcoiners, nostriches, and the rest of us, because we just are abhorrent when it comes to naming things. We just have no respect. No respect for packaging or people that have to write copy. We just don't care. But it doesn't subtract from
What kind of packaging are we referring to right here, David?
The nutsack packaging. The nutme.com package.
Those packages.
sack full of nuts. I mean, you know, but with all kidding aside, Pablo kind of dropped a paradigm shift on us, and I don't think very many people realize what he did. So I'm going to try to the best of my ability to just, in as short as I can, tell you that it's very possible that Pablo just made all Lightning wallets obsolete as far as at least using them in the context of social media, specifically that context being the Nostr protocol. If, if we just keep with the Nostr protocol right now, then most people say, yeah, but nobody's on it. And I get that. I mean, I'm not saying that's not that wouldn't be a true statement. But if we just allow ourselves a little bit to imagine all of ourselves in the Nostr protocol talking to each other in various ways that we do on social media, like on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, somehow Pablo was able to take our private and our public key pair and turn it into an individual wallet that is able to zap Zcash. And you can fund that wallet directly with the Lightning
Zcash
Network
or
wallet.
eCash?
eCash. Did I say Zcash?
You did.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
eCash, like the Chaumian emints and eCash and Fedimint and stuff like that. But he's taken that and he's figured out a way to make you and your identity a wallet, not a wallet that's connected to your identity. There's a big difference there, because like let's say that I've got, I don't know, I use GetAlby for a great many things.
Me too.
That is an external wallet that's connected to my identity, like my email, my I think I linked my new Twitter account to it. I linked a couple of other things to it, but it's a wallet that exists. And if that wallet goes away, it doesn't matter if I'm banned from something or not. If the wallet goes away, then I still don't have access to the wallet. If, on the other hand, if I am my wallet, then those two things cannot separate me. Does that make sense? There's no place where you can put a knife in between me and my access to a wallet, because my private public key pair is the wallet. He's essentially turned my digital identity, at least as far as Nostr right now is concerned, into an actual wallet. And I really don't think we appreciate what kind of a paradigm shift that can represent.
So help me appreciate it. What does this do for the future of not just peer-to-peer communication, but social media communication?
Well, one thing is that for anybody getting into or onboarding onto one of these platforms, and then like, for instance, even with Twitter, you kind of need to go through a few steps to activate the ability to use money on Twitter, right? On Nostr, or like, well, I'll keep with Nostr. We would ask people, hey, you need to jump in and try this shit out, and then we'll be able to zap you some Satoshis, and that's going to be great. And they're like, yay, let's do it. And then they get on, and that's kind of a fight right there. But then we tell them, okay, now you got to go find a wallet, and then you got to go scrape a wallet address, and then you got to put that wallet address into this little line over here in your bio, and hope to God that shit propagates all the way through the Nostr system so that all the relays can remember who the hell you are. That's a lot of friction. But if I have the option to say, just try it, use this client and give them, like, I don't know, coracle.social or primal.net or something, and say, it'll ask you if you're a first timer, if you want to spin up an identity, and you say yes, and you get those, and you're off to the races, and you already have the ability to accept eCash. Now, this is in its like infancy at this point. I mean, it's not really, it's waddling at best, because this is Pablo introduced 0.1. It's kludgy. We're promised tomorrow that he'll have a completely different interface that is even, that's a little bit less kludgy. And as we go on through the future, we've taken at least one single major friction step out of getting people to think differently and use social media differently. But what it means for content creators is that all of these people that have just had their friction reduced are going to be more likely to actually test this stuff out with people that actually produce content. So there's that aspect of it. But if I want to go straight up philosophical about it, I am my money. I don't have money. I'm not in a position where I can be separated from my money. My identity is the money. It's not only the wallet, it's the actual money itself. And we've never thought this way. Like, even we've been in Bitcoin I've been in Bitcoin since 2015. I still think of my wallet as something that is separate from me.
Yeah.
And I dare say that most people in Bitcoin today, and like the people that are like me that also do node running, we think of this shit as external or like ancillary items that you hang off of yourself, that you can take off and put away. You can throw it in a drawer. I can take my cold card. I can hide it in I don't know, under a rock at the playground, whatever it is that you want to do. I look at it as external and something that I can physically be separated from. Not with this. I can't be separated from the money that I actually am. Does that kind of help?
Yeah. So I mean, if you want to be philosophical about it, so like money is essentially a representation of your time, which
Right.
you and your time are inseparable. It just sounds like it's a little closer to the reality of nature with this development.
Yeah, and I've never come into, like, even before I discovered Bitcoin, like let's try this. Let me throw this out there too.
Throw it out there.
If I were to go to Wells Fargo today and I have like $10,000 in a checking account, and they say that they don't like me, we're not allowing you to withdraw or use any of your money today, Mr. Bennett. Sayonara, sorry for you. In 90 days, you'll get a check and you can figure out what the hell to do. But for those 90 days, you've got no money. Oh, okay. Now we've seen that happen. I mean, that has definitely happened. So now
Still
I
happening.
just take my private key and my public key and I walk my happy ass on down to Bank of America and I plug those keys into Bank of America and turn them. And now the teller goes, "Oh, Mr. Bennett, I see you have an account and we don't know where it is, but we see that it's got $10,000 in it. And because you've allowed access, would you like to drain that account of the $10,000, even though we don't know who has it, because you're the one with the permission and you're standing right here. Your identity is proven to us. We can see this shit on the network. I don't care where it came from. We know that you have access to this. Would you like the money?" And I say, "Yes, please." And then I walk my happy ass back down to Wells Fargo and say, "I never needed your brand. And I don't need Bank of America's brand. I don't need Jamie Dimon and his raft of crap brand. I am the wallet. I am the account. I am the physical dollars, Bitcoin, Lightning Network tokens, eCash tokens. What I am that. As I live and breathe, I'm a giant Bitcoin."
Reminds me of the Breaking Bad
I-
scene where he says, "I'm the one who knocks. I am the danger." That's
I
the meme.
really
You become
And-
the money finally matches the sovereignty of the man.
that's it. That's about the best way I could put it if I were to have to nutshell it. Get it?
You made the joke to the right crowd.
Yes. Nice pun. Nice pun. So what makes I don't even know who this guy is, by the way. Pablo Escobar.
He's a nostr / Lightning developer. That's
Okay.
my understanding.
What makes what he's doing different than what GetAlby is doing?
GetAlby is a wallet I can be separated from.
Okay.
And when
Yes.
that wallet goes down, because it is a centralized system. Don't
Okay.
get me wrong.
It's custodial.
I
It's custodial and what?
Well, not just one he can be separated from, one that he can be identified by.
yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this, like the what Pablo did, connected, building the keys into the actual money that I can now walk around with. It doesn't separate me or shield me from screwing myself up in public. Identity is identity. I mean, if I was really careful about it, I'd have a mask on. You would never see my face. And I just don't want to go through that shit. I was not raised that way. It doesn't make sense to me. I get that it's important, but with something like Albie, I could be just as safe and say, and be so careful with my identity that it wouldn't matter that somebody is able to, I don't know, say, well, we know this Get Albie wallet is a connected with these other things, but we still don't know who this guy is in real life. Okay, well, whoop-de-doo. But they do know me in real life, so I do want to make sure that everybody knows that just because Pablo's working on this, and it seems to be working very, very well, it's not a silver bullet to protect you and all your money. And since it's highly experimental, nobody should put anything over what they're willing to lose in this thing in the first place. I mean, that's just standard fare. Just, oh, it's this new thing, I'm going to put all of my money that I've ever had into it. Don't do that. That's probably the dumbest thing ever. But with Get Albie, there's a tether between me and a centralized situation, and if that tether is cut, then I don't have access to Albie. Now that tether could be cut because somebody wants to cut it, or like when Albie was down for about 8 hours, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I couldn't do dick with that wallet. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it did happen. There was a time at which the money that was mine, I had no access to. With the way that Nostr works through relays is that each relay that accepts the ability to be this kind of thing, which is like we have BIPs and Bitcoin, the Bitcoin improvement proposals. We have NIPs and Nostr. This is a NIP 60, NIP 61. That relay has to be running that.
8 too early. 8 NIPs too early.
Yeah. But if
if
relay
NIP 69 was nutsack,
if a relay
fantastic.
operator opts to put those two NIPs into the relay, then that relay will automatically pick up the fact that your private key, your public key pair is now this money. So if I've got 5 of these running and I'm connected to all 5 and one of them goes down, I've got 4 other places that my money, that me being my money makes sense on an entire network. All 5 of them would have to go down before I would not be able to send a nut zap or whatever.
So that was probably the coolest thing that I saw this week, or maybe last week, that kind of got overshadowed by other events. I just want to make sure that somebody was talking about it somewhere, and I knew you knew your stuff about it.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, I don't want to detract from the time I want to use to do the cool thing that I brought you on here to do today.
Alrighty.
So one of the things I really appreciate about our conversations is I always learn something new about agriculture, regenerative agriculture when I talk to you. And I thought it'd be cool to give you like a basic elevation for like somebody's normal house and see how you would go about planning like a home garden for that, a regenerative agriculture home garden, and show people what you were doing live and just let you talk us through it. Could you bring that up so I can make sure it's looking right on the screen?
Yeah.
All right, I think I got her locked in. Let's see, can I make this even? Yeah, I can make this a little bigger. I'm going to get our faces out of here because nobody cares right now. We'll pull this thing right up on the screen. All right, David. So I'm a new homeowner. I've got this house. I am upset about current products that are available for sale in my local grocery store. I'm worried about inflation, and buying those products. And I think I want to supplement my take by, growing some of my own food. Where do I start?
Well, you start at the very place that this map doesn't show.
Perfect.
And that's what direction is north.
Pick one.
And And that's one of the things that we do need to watch out for, is because everything that's going to come after this is going to everything boils down to around where does the sun come up and where does the sun go down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fake it,
Okay.
and I'm going to say that this way is north.
Cool.
So now we'll have west and east. And just for good measure, we'll put south down here. So the thing about permaculture and only thinking about it for growing the purposes of growing food is to miss to be conservative, of a good half of what permaculture can actually do.
Okay.
So there's, let's say that if I did want to begin with a garden, I would definitely, I'm going to say that this is the front of house down here. So I'm going to write it front of house. This is backyard. So that, so that we know where we're at. Excuse me. So the first thing that I want to do is try to identify, a place where I can actually have some kind of, if I want to do it like row, the old till the soil, make rows, have a nice little square garden plot. I'm going to want it probably where I can, dig something up, and I don't want to cut down any trees, and I'm going to try not to cut down any bushes. So I'm looking for a flat spot out here. And automatically, I got to figure out how much light I'm going to get. If I know that the sun rises in the east and goes in this direction across this way and sets in the west, then I got to figure out something about what I'm going to plant, the varieties of plants that I want. Do they want harsh sun? Do they want sun all damn day? Do they want only morning sun? And that's one of the reasons why having these directionals or the ordinals on the map are kind of critical. So, like for instance, if I put a garden right here, probably not going to get any shade from this tree. I'm definitely not going to get shade from this tree. I will get shade in this tree, in this tree, but only in the afternoon, and that will come up here in a second. But for the great guts and feathers, this is going to get the most light that you can possibly get, unless I also locate one over here, because there's sun is going to be streaming in the late afternoon from there. And this thing is pretty much going to be, since the sun rises in the east, this thing I don't really worry about. And we'll say this is short enough that it doesn't cast too much shade. So here actually might be the best spot for a full sun all day long garden, which means that whatever you put in that, it better be able to take a lot of damage. I mean, and this all depends on what your latitude is. So let's envision that I'm still living down in Texas. Whatever goes in that plot has got to be able to take the full weight of the sun all day long. And there's not a lot that can do that.
Okay.
And that's one of the huge mistakes that people make when they first build their garden. I want as much sun as possible. So you want a fire-breathing dragon on your plants like all day, every day. And generally speaking, that's going to kill the shit out of your plant. Poor plant's going to sit out there wondering what the hell did it do to you to make you want to torture it so much. So one of the things, look at yellow. Yellow's drawn on my shit. So in Texas, this is right out. I'm not even going to consider that.
Okay.
I'm just not going to do it because I know everything in there is going to die. And it is the furthest walk away, which means that I got to go to it. Now, if there's a gate right here into like an alley that I, am going to take the trash out or something like that, and I'm not taking it to the front of the house, to on the street, because a lot of us in Texas have alleys and we have dumpsters in the back of our alley. then this is not so bad because you're going to go buy it anyway. You're going to be there because you're walking here. But if this is not the case, then you don't want a garden that's that far away. You want it somewhere where you're going to be. So let's look at this over here. What happens here is that I'm going to get a lot of sun from the east in the morning and the early morning and the getting into noontime. And then the sun's going to pass apex and it's going to start going this way. And then the light's going to start coming from here.
Okay.
I would much rather have my thing, right here than anywhere else. Hold on for a second. I want to do something.
Sure. And you're saying this versus the other direction for a few reasons. Number one, the sun's not going to be quite as harsh, and number two, it's an easier walk. Right? It's more accessible.
Yeah, it's an easier walk, but more is that the sunlight that comes out of the east in the morning, there's something about it that isn't so harsh. And it's like, I guess it's probably moderated by the air temperature that's generally cooler in the morning. But as stuff heats up and you start getting that western sun, man,
Does it depend on what hemisphere you live on, right? Like,
yes,
because
absolutely.
we're in the west because we live in, like, not everyone lives in the Western Hemisphere, but
or the northern hemisphere. You're in El Salvador, right?
no,
he lives
I'm in
there now.
California.
Oh, you're in Cali right now.
I'm
Okay.
in Sacramento. This is Sacramento and San Joaquin. That's where 99% of walnuts are grown for all of America.
Okay, so if
enough
you're
nut talk for
if you're south of the equator, all of this is reversed. I mean, like literally, you just flip the poles. Like whatever I say is north becomes south, and whatever is south becomes north, and you just flip it around, because that's a major thing. And a lot when I talk about things, I have a tendency to be stuck in the northern hemisphere because this is where I live.
Right.
Yeah. And it really is hard to get out of that. But getting back to this is that the temperatures in the morning are just a little bit better. It's easier to moderate, and then you'll see how far this plot is away from what I'm going to say is that this tree will be the only thing that casts shade. And it's going to, because it's so far away, the distance, this is a whole house right here. So we can kind of figure out that we'll say it's like a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So this is a good clip. So by the time this tree starts casting shade over here, you're probably in the same boat as you would have been up here.
Okay.
So what at that point, what I want to start doing is let me see if I can't straighten that up a little bit. I'm just going to take all that away. And then, hold on for a second. I need to make sure that I've got, that way I can draw on this instead. And that'll clear it up easier. So now what I really want is I want in Texas getting down south, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, as you go farther north closer to the equator, you'll have the same problem. You'll get a lot of heat. You'll get a lot of heat out of the west. So what I'm looking at is, since I'm in Texas, I'd actually be inclined to figure out where the shade cast is here and put my garden like this. Now this one gives me all of the eastern sun, and then just as the temperatures for the plants start to really screw them up, this tree starts casting shade. Your water usage will go down. Your plants will be in a much, they'll be much happier and much healthier. And in this particular case, it's right off of the porch. So it has easy access. And all of that is, so for a food garden, this is the way that I would be, if I was doing it like this, where I was having a plot of, a square plot of land, and I was tilling up, and I was going out and weeding, and I was planting, whatever you do. that's the way that's exactly where I would put this, and I wouldn't put it anywhere else as far as this particular plot is concerned. But you can put food anywhere. Like there's all manner of fruit vines that you can grow and have it crawl up this tree. It will get shade from the east. It'll get like a lot of sun from the west underneath this canopy, but it will use the trunk of this tree to climb up and support itself. And I can't remember exactly the name of, there's a lot of different perennial that will come back year after year, fruits that grow on vines that do that. But whatever it is that you think about, if you start going, well, I'll get a vining permanent production plant and I'll put it right here. Well, if you put it right here, is it going to be able to take the western sun all day, or is this something that you want to put over on this tree so that it can get a lot of the eastern sun but get protected by this tree and maybe these bushes from the western exposure?
Okay.
So these are all the things that I want to think about.
You know, I almost deleted these bushes and trees before I shared this with you to make it easier for you. I'm so much happier now that I left them.
No, that actually brings up a good hold on for a sec. Sorry, it's getting hot in here. I had to shut down the air conditioner because it's making too much noise. That brings up an aspect that you hear about in things like permaculture, but that extends to a lot of stuff, is that people think that with a blank sheet of paper, that's the way to go. It is not really. It's like I don't want to have any problems whatsoever. I don't want anything in my way, and all of a sudden, it becomes really easy to get stumped because you're dealing with a blank sheet of paper. There's nothing to fire up your imagination. It's
no
just
guideposts.
Everything has to come ex nihilo, right? It all has to come from nothing. But when you gave me this map, the first thing that I start doing is going, where do I have shade? Where do I have open spaces? What else can I utilize? And so the idea is that what you think of as obstructions or things that are in your way, they're not there to hurt you.
So what
They're
kind of
there to
so what kind of foods are we talking about, right? Because you're saying you want to give less sun to these foods that you're growing in your garden, but what about like certain trees that grow food as well? They're going to get sun all day, every day, no matter what, right? That are also growing food.
once they're mature, those guys are fine.
The
But
trees
like,
are.
yeah, the trees will be fine. They're designed that way, but some trees do better than others being protected from full sun all day long when they're babies. Like black walnut tree, they do not like full, like if you plant a black walnut tree and it gets full sun all day long, it's going to fry those leaves and that baby tree is going to die, even though black walnuts are some of the hardiest trees that there are. When they're babies, they ain't so hardy. So you have to watch out for them. Oak trees, not so bad. They can kind of take it. But when most trees are babies, you have to kind of watch them like vegetables. Once they get past year 3 or 4, unless you plan on like not watering them or something, you ain't got shit to worry about. But annual plants that you have to plant every year, like squash, cucumbers, onions, garlic, stuff like that. That's when you start having to watch how much heat is it going to get in the back end of the day. But like there's another perennial plant that's one of my favorite plants is comfrey. And it says it, like everybody and their dog will tell you that thing is a full sun plant. It is not. I don't care who tells you that, well, they've got a master's and they're a master gardener and they say that you can plant that shit in full sun. I know, because I have a lot of experience with that plant, and it's a perennial. It's not a food plant, although it can be. They taste like garbage though, so I don't recommend it, but it's a good medicinal plant, and it's a perennial, and it does all kinds of stuff, but it's not even a shrub. It's like a little plant. And I noticed that it did best with a full eastern sun and 100% shade in the afternoon. Like starting at least 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I had a bed that was shaded by my house, and it was deep, full shade. And if you were to read what other people say about comfrey, they'd say, make sure you put it in full sun. All the comfrey plants that I've had in full sun, they don't die, but they don't do well. And I don't like seeing stuff struggle. So you do have to like research what plants you're putting in or what trees you want to put in. You got to do the work to read about them and ask other people questions if if you don't know. And there's all manner of stuff that I don't know, and I for the rest of my life will have to reach out and ask somebody, hey, I've never done jujubes. What do I need to watch out for? I can find out a lot myself, but asking an expert is great. But yeah, that's sort of, there's other things that you can do if you don't want to do, like I was explaining, or we were talking about using these trees as scaffolding for vining plants. But there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with permaculture that has nothing at all to do with food. And remember, we were talking about not putting a garden here or a garden here because of all the sunlight that was going to get hit. What do you think's going on right here with this wall of the house? It's getting irradiated by sun. It's, and the bushes stop right here. There's nothing here, right? All the way
So you
until
think the house isn't going to grow into a full house if it gets that much sun?
No, it's the thermal energy load in the summertime is going to start radiating to inside the house. And this house, the inside becomes hotter. Now, if you want to use your air conditioning budget to excavate this heat and get it to go out, then more power to you. But you can save that money by coming over here and planting things like my favorite, and I would do it right across the fence line, is a fast-growing tree called black locust, because that's also a very useful tree, and it grows fast, and it grows tall, and it will shade this entire side of the house inside of 4 years. So if you start looking at the house as to, well, what's its solar aspect, or the other thing is how, if there is a slope, like a ridge line if we're looking at the roof, and I don't want to make fun of the Secret Service, but they probably can't walk on a roof like this because it's sloped.
I was wondering who was going to say something first.
But if the water's running off and it's running off, say, into the driveway, then the question becomes, how can you capture that water and direct it into your gardens where you really need it? Because we have this fascination with getting water to go off our hardscapes as fast as possible and not save it. And that means that I'm spending money to water the things that if I spent the time looking around my house to figure out how I can capture the rainwater or how I can shade the west side of my house, I don't need to shade the east side of my house. But the west side of the house, you need to shade that. And if you start looking at these things where all these systems are connected, where's the sun coming up? Is there shade? What's the relationship to the fence line? If you start looking at all these things, then it kind of becomes a bit of a fascinating puzzle. Now, there's a lot of people that just won't care, or they just don't have the time. But if this is, if any of the listeners out there are going, for instance, any of the listeners out there, find the west side of your house. When this is done, if it's still daylight, go to the west side of your house and put your hand on the wall. Does it feel good? If it's not shaded, is it hot? If so, that's with $500 in trees and labor, you could probably take care of that shit inside of 2 to 3 years. And that wall will never be hot, which means you're not spending as much money on air conditioning to get the thermal energy load out of your house in the summertime. So it depends on how we look at all these things. How do we look at the yard? How do we look at the house in relationship to the yard? What can we do?
Yeah, I'd love
And
to
that's
get
sort
rid
of
of
the
my
way
load.
that I approach all this.
Would you ever put solar or think about doing solar at all?
Gardens
Yep.
are solar, Sean.
I
Say it
I
again.
abs I absolutely would put solar on the roof if I had the money, and B, I knew that they were quality solar panels. But I'm not going to kill myself to do it. But again, here's one of the issues with that is that I would be more prone to put solar on a roof, especially in something like Texas, because the solar panels themselves then become the thermal shield for the house. So you're essentially everywhere that's underneath those solar panels, and usually
You're
what
double
I've
dipping
never seen
in
it
efficiency, essentially.
exactly. And I've never seen where there's not a space underneath the solar panel in between the shingles and the actual solar panel itself. So essentially you've made a shade for
Yeah.
the top of your house, which catches the force maximum of the solar forces coming out of the sky. And that helps just by shading it, much less getting electricity for it on the back end. So that's something that makes sense to me.
So not only are you reducing the draw from the local utilities for electricity, you're reducing your own local draw on AC.
Right. But that comes back to bite your ass in the winter because now your house isn't receiving a thermal load, which takes me back to the planting trees on the west side of your house. Don't plant, if you live in like a temperate zone, don't plant evergreens on the west side of your house because they will permanently shade the west side of your house. And in the winter, you want the thermal energy to impact that west side of that house.
Do
And
those black locusts, those leaves fall off in the
yep,
fall time?
they're deciduous, and they're great trees because they provide not deep shade but dappled shade. So
Hmm.
they're good for growing other plants underneath. Like I would start if I wanted to really grow a black walnut tree, the year before I planted it, I would plant a black locust tree and then find out where the west shade is going to be cast and then plant the black walnut in the shade that's caused by the west shadows of that particular tree as the sun's going down. And then the black walnut or the black locust tree is a legume, so it fixes nitrogen into the soil. So it's
Oh,
actually
fantastic.
fertilizing.
Right.
It would actually fertilize the black walnut tree for free. So again, you get sort of a double dip there too. You get free nitrogen for the black walnut tree, and it gets shade so it doesn't cook off in the latter part of the day. But just like the west hand side of the house, like here, the if we look over here, this is the south side of the house and it's the front yard. Again, you in if you're in the northern hemisphere, then that south side of the house is going to get a lot of solar energy impacting into it in the summertime, but it's going to get a lot more in the wintertime. So planting, making sure that there's planted deciduous trees to block this in the summertime, but all the leaves to fall off in the wintertime so that the winter sun can warm up the south end of the house. Now you're able to warm up, you get this passive heating effect. So you're kind of maximizing how your house is situated. But this, if this wasn't north, if this was the south side, then I would want a line of trees back here. And I wouldn't really, mess with trying to guard the other side of the house on
What
This
about,
whole this
yeah.
whole thing needs an AI.
that.
Can we run back to the garden now? I want to talk about what you would put in it and why and how you would like organize it.
Now that one's going to be a little more difficult for me because I'm now in Washington, and not in Texas.
Well, we assume this house is in
So,
Texas from the beginning. Let's keep it in Texas.
and I have,
and he's also a carnivore now.
yes, I eat mostly meat, but that doesn't mean that I don't grow a good tomato. um, I like growing tomatoes. A lot of people don't, they just don't. So all of about what I'm about to say, you got to kind of temper with what your personal choice is. But like if I was back in Texas, I would do tomatoes. I do a lot of peppers, jalapeno, cayenne peppers. Um, I don't really ever do spring or fall crops like potatoes, garlic, and stuff like that. Usually I only did full summer crops, but squash is in there, okra's in there, and now you end up with a situation like okra. They can grow really tall. So
How
if
tall?
like let's say I was back here in the pit of hell garden that's going to get fried all the time,
Okay.
I would put all the short plants here, all the medium height plants here, and stuff like okra, corn. If you're going to grow corn, I don't know why anybody grows corn, but if you like growing corn, then put it on the west hand side so that this ends up blocking the sunlight to the medium, and the medium ends up blocking sunlight to the small plants. So you could, in this configuration, you can kind of get away with having a garden out in the open. And this is a good practice if you're somebody that you don't have any trees. Like let's say that Greg, let's say you were successful and had completely wiped all this stuff off the map and it was just a big flat area, then you've got no protection. So you actually have to use the garden itself to act as, shade and windbreak and that kind of thing. And that's sort of the way you do it. So you would put the tall stuff on the west to, protect the little guys on the east side. But yeah, so okra is tall, corn is tall. I've grown both of those. The medium plant stuff like squashes, cucumbers, whatnot, would go in the middle, and then the shorty stuff like carrots and whatnot like that. But that ends up being more fall and spring type crops. But green beans are really great. Like if you have cow panel, I don't know if you know what a hog panel or cow panels are.
Nope.
Great. They're big pieces of fence that's made out of like galvanized gray steel thick wire.
Okay.
And there's the gaps in between the wires are about like, I don't know, is like as big as my hand, something like that. And those make great scaffolding. And if you put them upright, like on the west hand side, and grow stuff like green beans as vines that go up it, then you get a massive shade block for all the rest of the guys down here if for whatever reason you just don't have any tall plants. And that way the shade itself is also giving you stuff like food. So it's always trying to like, how can I do three things at once?
Right.
Is like the maximum amount of shit that I can do is exactly how much I want to do. Especially if I can pull it off all at the same time.
Yeah, I like how you're, maximizing solar load for like one plant while minimizing it for another, while also nitrogen fixing for the rest of the plants with that black locust. That's fantastic.
And that's the other thing is that legumes come in all kinds of sizes, like green beans, snap peas, sugar peas. Those are all legumes. And then you get into like the trees, like black locust. You can look at it as a bean tree because they're all legumes. They derive this ability to fix nitrogen from way back in history when a lot of these plants were more connected. Like there wasn't really a woody dicot type of legume, and somehow or another maybe a mutation happened, and then all of a sudden you end up with leguminous trees. Like black locust is a leguminous tree. Wisteria, like blooming wisteria, that really pretty purple stuff.
Yeah.
Legume. Honey locust is a legume, but the beans off of it have like a sugar content. of 50%,
Oh,
and you can feed that to finish off cattle
oh,
because the sugar load is so high that you actually get a really good meat marbling by feeding cattle at the end of their cycle fruit and high sugar items like persimmons, honey locust bean pods. But it's weird because you're looking at a tree going, it's a legume, but it's a tree.
yeah.
And there's a lot of them like that. There's a lot of full blown trees that are flat ass legumes. And if you understand what they do for the soil, then you start going, okay, well, every time I plant one of these, I'm planting a permanent fertilizer factory right here. What needs fertilizer? And figure out a way to put it within proximity of that tree so that they just get permanently fertilized and you ain't got to buy them fertilizer. And that way, permaculture comes in to sort of make your life easier if you do the work of thinking about what you want to do up front. It doesn't mean that it's always going to work. And it doesn't mean that you won't be wrong. You will. But hey, it's a worthy endeavor.
How much in weight is a black locust tree going to produce in a year on a yearly basis with these legumes?
Weight of like nitrogen.
No, just the beans.
Okay. So a honey locust will produce, oh God, hold on.
No, let's stick with the
'Cause
black locust.
actually, let's see. Yeah. Get that over here.
The Bitcoin price.
No embarrassing tabs. Lucky Dave.
Yeah. Yeah. Get it off. Get it off. Let's see. Honey locust. £300 in a given year.
Holy shit! Of one
Yeah.
tree.
Yep.
That's amazing.
That's not surprising. I've seen my kids used to go to a school out in Canyon, Texas, and they had a front lawn that was filled with like, I don't know, 20 honey locust trees.
Yeah.
And every fall there'd be like I don't know, 20, 25 4-foot piles tall of honey locust pods that they rake up, and they'd have to do that 3 times a year.
So if I did, for example, in my backyard, if I do a bunch of these honey locust trees, and I'm collecting 300 pounds worth of their bean pods every year, can I then? 'Cause I've got a friend who raises cattle. Could I then take that load and sell it to them as feed for finishing their cattle?
Mm-hmm.
If we're triple dipping.
Yeah, you could definitely. I have thought about it on many occasions of going and well, I've done this before, not with honey locust pods, but I used to go pick up the raked up oak leaves around Texas Tech. Would at the end of the fall, their lawn guys would go out and they'd rake up all these leaves, and there would be hundreds. I mean, this is a massive campus. There was 1,000, 50-gallon garbage bags of oak leaves. I don't know, a buddy of mine with a pickup truck, we would just go pick up as many as we could carry. I take him to this part of my house outside of the backyard that had really bad soil, and I just dumped that shit right on the soil. Nobody's going to stop me. They're not going to arrest me. Oh my God, he's taking our dead leaves.
taking the
Oh,
leaves.
stop him. Oh my God. No, nobody cares. But when I put that onto the soil and it protects the soil and keeps it moist, all of a sudden the earthworms can do what they do. The bacteria and the fungi start growing, and all of a sudden I got soil that's repaired after a couple of years. But when you're thinking about picking up black locust pod or honey locust pods and taking them to your friend, I don't think anybody's going to give a shit. And if
Well, no, I'm just talking
if
about
the guy
having
doesn't-
my own. Like, if I take it to them, I'm not picking up from somebody else's house. If these are being produced on my land, right? And is that something I can use as like extra income? Is somebody going to pay for that if they're finishing cows?
I have yet to see anybody actually sell a cattle rancher pods as feed, because generally speaking, the old guys would plant them around their property and just let the cows graze in the fall on the pods. There's a book, there's a whole book about this. God, was it? I can't. It'll come to me. Actually, it's going to come to me right now.
Yeehaw and honeypot.
Trees. There's a whole book about trees somewhere. Smith. There's a last name is Smith, and the book's name is Tree Crops. He wrote it in like 1918, and he goes through the nutritional components of a whole bunch of trees that we forgot about, like carob trees. Carob trees are awesome. These things will grow in old lava beds with no soil, and yet produce so much sugar that you can I can't remember what one tree would take care of one pig for 1 year.
Whoa.
In dropped calories. Although this only works in places like Hawaii, where they're constantly setting flower, constantly fruiting, and constantly dropping. You wouldn't be able to do this shit in temperate. But for the guys that are more around the equator, this is viable. This is a viable feed option. And these carob trees will just drop like tons of sugar-based calories down. And I don't mind if my animals eat sugar. It's not good for our pancreas, but animals don't seem to give a shit, and it gives them a good fat marbling. We don't use trees the way that our ancestors used to use them. We just think of them as a place to put a hammock and sit under the shade. But these things produce like oodles of food that can be converted into meat, and then we eat the meat. It's a beautiful thing. But we don't do that anymore, at least not very many people.
One question about going back to what you're growing. What's the difference in the food that you're growing, in a garden in your yard versus these big, huge farms where there's no shade for acres? What's the difference in those? Just out of curiosity, right?
The nutritional load is always going to favor, and you're going to hate hearing this, the nutritional load is always going to favor the supermarket and massive farmed food, or farmed foods food. Nobody wants to hear that. And I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that the reality is this. When you go out for the first time and you're going to grow a garden, it's probably not going to do well. And you're going to end up buying most of your food from a supermarket. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And after you get good at it, you go, okay, man, I'm getting really good at it. You're still not going to grow the amount of food that you need to intake for the year to stay alive and healthy. So at first,
and that's because the size of your garden is not going to be big enough.
Yeah, the size and your ability to manage like pests, your ability to manage disease, because this all still happens. Mm-hmm. Your ability to manage hydration. There's all kinds of factors, and once you get good at it and you stop losing crops, and you start being able to focus on making each particular crop more and more healthy by making sure you start getting into the micronutrients, like, well, might need a little bit of molybdenum, maybe a little bit of cobalt. Going to go easy on the nitrogen, but we really want to make sure that we've got a lot of calcium in our soil. When you start getting to that point, then your nutritional stuff, your nutritional component far exceeds what you can find on a farm. There's this balance that, like a really old, well-seasoned farmer that's working for, plant and bear crop science GMO corn has this much nutritional value. Whereas when you start farming or you start doing your own garden, you're down here. After a while,
soil's not as good. Is that part of it too?
Soil's not as good. You're not as good as the farmer at being able to catch shit early.
Yeah.
And you're also may not be the person that's going to correct the issues that you do see when you see them as quickly as the farmer does, because if the farmer doesn't, that's it for the year. Mm. He's done. He didn't control a fungus. He put stuff that we would never want to put in our bodies on it, but he saved the crop. He has a crop to sell. But if he didn't do that and he's got 1,000 acres, That's a different world than me in my backyard garden that loses all my corn, but I still get some squash. It's so different that's why I say at the very, very beginning, no matter what you do, you're going to get more nutrition out of the shitty food that we badmouth on Twitter and Nostr all day long in the fiat food system than you will doing it yourself, which is what everybody advocates. And this is one of the things that kind of bugs me, is that we go, stop buying food at the grocery store, grow your own. Do you have any idea how hard that is? That's a hard ask. It's a lot of work. It's a shit ton of work. And most people are going to get so frustrated doing that they're never going to try again. Whereas when I'm telling people that they should consider it and that they should get excited about it, and that's one of the reasons why I want to start writing about soil, to get people excited about thinking about this stuff, instead of just saying, you suck because you're going to Safeway. Get your own garden or you're dead to me. And then watch them fail miserably because they've never done it before, and then walk away from them, is not the kind of world that I want to live in. It doesn't make sense. It's not helpful, and nobody's going to be changing their diet because of it. You want to change your diet because you're growing your own food. You bought yourself a 20-year, education. You don't have to go to school for it, but you do have to go through the 20 years to get to the point where you feel comfortable that any seed you grow is going to be better than anything that you get in a store, because that's not going to be the case the first year or the second. I think that that's okay. I'm not here on this planet to live this life so that everything that I want is just given to me, and all I have to do is open up a pretty box like I bought an iPhone. It doesn't work that way. And honestly, I think we've been brainwashed into thinking that it damn well better that work that way, or we're going to Karen ourselves over to the store manager and start asking for heads to roll, because by God, I'm Karen and I expect this shit. This is what it looks like. This is what I think we've become, something that we really don't want to admit to ourselves we've become. I mean, most of us are okay. Greg, I know you and Sean and Yellow and Becca and all the rest of us cats, we get it. We're always going to be working on ourselves for the rest of our lives. But when we come into contact with normies, this is why I can't hold normal conversations anymore. And I cannot. I mean, it's like pulling teeth.
When you say a normal conversation, what are you talking about?
Hey, did you catch the Bears last night? That was an important game, wasn't it? And as much as I do enjoy watching, I will watch these guys play football until the day I freaking die.
Okay, Lubbock. Shout out to Lubbock.
But you understand it's a circus.
But I understand that it's not as important as people that get really pissed off that their team lost. I'm like, were you the coach? were you the forward on that son of a bitch? I mean, were you even the trainer? If the answer to all those questions is no, then my answer, my big question is, why would you let it upset you like this? And that's not just sports. That's like the political circus. I cannot believe they're going to run that guy again. Okay, well, are you a campaign manager of any kind? I mean, do you have anything to do with how government operates, or are you just pissed off because you're working at Burger King? Because quite honestly, if you can't control it, then you need to figure out something else to worry about that makes you happy. I cannot have normal conversations because, again, everybody seems to be walking around. What was that guy said in The Big Short, that movie? Stephen Carell's character was like, everybody's walking around like they're in some kind of freaking Enya video. I think about that line all the time.
I watch that movie once or twice a month.
I watch that. I've watched that thing at least 8 times. I pick up something new every single time.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that the people who acted in it don't even realize probably what it really means?
I would imagine that some of them did. I have a lot of respect for Steve Carell. I don't know why, but I have a sneaky suspicion that guy might very well be brilliant.
Yeah.
He might get it. He might actually get it. But Yeah, some of the rest of them, not so sure. Although Brad Pitt probably gets it. For some reason, I like Brad Pitt too. I shouldn't, but
He's
that
just so damn
performance he
handsome.
gave in 12 Monkeys, I just was like, okay, you got me, dude. It's like you're a really good actor.
David, can you stop the screen share? I want to fix the screen before we move on here. Unless you want to talk more about this. Oh, there we go.
No, I'm good because those are like that's sort of like the major principles is just the real major principle is A, look at what you have and figure out that what you see is not stopping you from succeeding. Like, God, I wish that fence wasn't there. Well, the fence is there. How are you going to use it to your benefit? And two, where's the sun? Where's the sun? That's the last thing. Those
Becca's
two
got him
things.
right in
If you
frame.
can stop, if you can stop thinking about like objects in the yard as an obstacle and stop wishing for a blank sheet of paper and understand where the solar aspect is coming from, I honestly believe that 75% of the battle and everything else can be learned. But if you don't understand that concept of the west wall is always going to be hot, the east wall is never going to be hot unless you're in a different situation. But generally speaking, that's true.
Unless you're in El Salvador.
Shade. Yeah,
All the
don't
walls are
shade
hot.
don't shade the west side of your house with evergreens because they will constantly shade even through the winter months when you actually want the thermal energy. So it's like actually looking at what's at the reality that you exist in instead of constantly wishing that it was different.
Okay, so now a more relative question is, how do we use poop from a baby for uh, planting more productively?
Yes, please let me know.
Or
And
manure.
how do I
Compost
do it on my south-facing balcony?
Apartment. In the apartment balcony.
You just spread
Actually-
baby shit everywhere.
It's not impossible, but a red wiggler worm farm and mix it with newspaper clippings and moldy lettuce.
Okay, you hear that, Luca? Moldy lettuce. and
Newspaper
worms.
They'll eat right through it, and then when they're as their casings and castings and all that stuff falls down through whatever worm bin you decide to set up, all that stuff can be used as fertilizer.
Perfect.
But it has to be run through the worm first, otherwise human
that?
pathogens are an issue.
Luca is like, I'm gonna produce so much poop right now.
Yeah, he
I'm
just
gonna make
pooped
so
again
much
on my
fertilizer.
leg. He's like, I'm on it. Right? Yeah.
David, we're running short on time here. Let us run a little long tonight because it was a fascinating one. So I want to give you a chance to tell folks where they can find you. I did link your podcast in the show notes as well as your Twitter and your nostr handle and your Get Albie. But tell everybody what you're working on.
Honestly, that's about it. I mean, you come to I'm at Nunya Business over on Nostr. I don't even remember what my new Twitter handle is, so I can't even give it to you, which kind of tells you that I'm just not that interested.
At David B84567.
That sounds about right. And then yeah, between those two, you'll always be able to get a hold of me. So, and then it's the Bitcoin and podcast, and you can get that wherever. Just type that into your
Found.
podcatcher, and you should be able to pop it up. Yeah, out of it. Especially, one thing I will ask: use a podcasting 2.0 app, please. If you're not using a podcasting 2.0 app, you're kind of stuck in the Stone Age, and you're not getting stuff like chapter art, transcripts. You're not getting like chapters with like links and stuff. Like, I'm talking about this in this particular chapter, and you can click on the link in the show notes, and it will take you to exactly what I was talking about. You don't get that with Apple Podcasts. So, and you don't get to stream Satoshis to people that you really like. You want them to continue. You don't get to give them
Give people an example of a podcasting 2.0 app.
I use Fountain.app. That's my favorite. That's my daily driver so far. There's like Booberry. There's like True Fan, or not True Fans. True Boob, something like that.
I think that's the one that
actually,
uses FlipSwap, isn't it?
All of the people that if you go to podcastindex.org, there's a button that says apps on it, and it will show you all of the brand new Podcasting 2.0 apps, plus a bunch of hosting platforms for Podcasting 2.0. So, yeah, I mean, it's like that's about it, guys. Again, I really appreciate you inviting me on the show again. It's nice to see everybody.
Hopefully we'll get you back on again. Thank you, David.
Good, because I've missed you guys. You guys, I cannot get y'all over on Nostr, so I gotta come to y'all's party over there on Twitter, and it's
Hey, the
it's
day
just different now. You guys are so different.
the day Nostr lets me have my group chats,
The group chat.
Yes.
that's a killer.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. But I definitely understand what you're saying. There's a lot of the issues that I was talking about with the everybody wants stuff out of the box, nice and shiny and working. I am a victim of that too. And I've really had to let go of a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally have let go of so that I can continue to investigate what's going on over here. But people that are making their living on it, I definitely understand why they're not budging. I get it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff that's broke and there's a lot of stuff that has yet to be built, but it's only 3 years old. I mean, look where we are with, Bitcoin took 15 years to get here.
To get to the point where Jeremy is
now-
panic selling it.
And still no one knows about it.
Except for Larry Fink. Now we have to contend with Larry Fink. It took us
Yeah.
15 years to come to butt heads with Larry Fink.
For real.
And Nostr's only 3 years old. It'll happen. We just got to be a little patient. And we also have to understand that the people that don't want to come over from Twitter, most of them probably have a very good reason, like no group chat. I get it. But if you don't need a group chat and you want to experience something fun and cool and awesome and new, then come on over and go to @nunya business and find me there, and I'll guide you the rest of the way.
All right. Thank you, David. If you hang on for a minute,
Thank
we're
you,
gonna
David.
play
Thank
us out
you.
here.
Yeah, you're
Always
welcome.
a pleasure, David.
You
Always.
too, Sean.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.